everyone, it's Alice, and today it's time to show you all of the books that I got in October. Luckily for my rather overfilled shelves, this month's book haul is not as big as last month's, but I got a bunch of books that I'm really excited about, and I was also sent a book, which was very nice. I actually only got fiction books this month though. Like usually I'll have a couple of non-fiction books in there as well, but this month we've only got fiction. Although I'm sure next month there will be quite a lot of non-fiction because it's non-fiction November, and I always end up like hearing about so many interesting books that month, and I'll probably, knowing myself, end up getting quite a few. Anyways, let's actually get into the books now. The first book that I got is one that I've been looking forward to all year, and it is The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. This is the follow-up to The Thursday Murder Club, which I read last year? This year? I don't really know, but I read it fairly recently and I loved that book, and I'm so happy that this is a series and that there are going to be more books about these characters because I can't wait to just revisit them and see what they're up to. These books are set in an idyllic retirement village, and we follow a group of pensioners who meet once a week to discuss true crime. And in the first book they got caught up in a murder that happened right in their village. But in this one, I think that one of the pensioners receives a letter from one of their old friends, and this friend needs help in some sort of way, and then I think there are some murders, and then I'm sure they all come together and figure it out. I found the first book to be very charming, so I'm expecting this will be as well, and it's just really fun to read about these old people who really don't give a damn anymore. Like it's very entertaining. Secondly, I got a classic that everyone keeps telling me that I need to read, and it is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, I've never read anything by Wilde, but I've heard that his writing is really, really good, so I'm excited to try it out, and I have kind of high hopes for this. I feel like this is one of those books that I've heard so many things about, and yet I don't know anything about it somehow, but you know, I've heard it's amazing. I feel like this is set in the Victorian era, maybe, and it's about a guy who I think doesn't age, and maybe he's not a great guy. Honestly, I don't really know, but I kind of want to keep myself in the dark until I actually read this. I have sort of plans for doing a type of like classics project next year, and I'm thinking maybe this will be one of the books that I read for that, but I haven't quite decided yet because I haven't quite figured out how I'm gonna do all of that. But yeah, I'm excited to read this and try it out. Moving on, I got a mystery thriller because it wouldn't be a haul without it, so I got They Never Learn by Lane Fargo, and this sounds very cool. It's about this English professor who is an amazing teacher, but also an amazing murderer, which is a fun combination, I feel. And I guess what she does is that every year at the university she works at, she will pick out a guy who is horrible, and she will plan his murder, and I'm assuming she like keeps getting away with it since she obviously keeps doing it. I'm assuming what happens in here, like in the story we get to read, is that she tries maybe to murder someone and it doesn't go according to plan or something. Like, I'm just assuming that's what's gonna happen. So I think we get to read about that, and then I also think we read about some female students at the school, although I don't really know how all of that connects, but I'm sure it will. But this sounds very fun. I feel like it's rare to get to read from the perspective of a female murderer, so I think that'll be very interesting. I also really like this cover, by the way. Like, it's pretty simple, but there's something about it that I find very compelling. Then I got a book about witches because, as you may know, I'm always looking for more witch stories. So I picked up The Manningtree Witches by A.K. Blakemore, and this is like historical fiction paranormal, which is exactly what I want. Like, I want stories about witches set in our world, and I think that's what this is. It's also set in a small English village, so it has this like small town vibe going on as well, which I love. I think this is set in the 1640s, which I'm pretty sure is like right in the middle of when witch trials were a thing. And we just meet this young woman who is trying to survive. And I think she lives in this little village or this little town. And then one day this new man appears and starts badgering the ladies about what they're up to, which is still not that uncommon these days either, I feel. But it sounds very interesting. I think that stories set in this time period are always very intriguing, so I'm excited to try this out. Next, we have got a book with quite the title, and it is The Book of Human Skin by Michelle Lovrick. This is also historical fiction, although I think it's set in Italy, and it seems like it's sort of historical fiction slash horror, which is fun. The story is set in 1784, and we meet this boy who is the heir to this amazing palace, but then I think his sister is born and he feels very threatened by her and decides to get rid of her. The blurb says that he condemns her to several horrible fates, but apparently she has some helpers along the way, like a portrait painter and a doctor obsessed with skin, which I'm assuming has something to do with the title, and then also a cigar-smoking nun, which immediately, for me, conjures up like images of Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act, which I'll probably not be able to get out of my head for a while, which honestly is not a bad place to be. Anyways, this sounds like a very interesting book. Another book I think is also kind of like horror-ish is Middle Game by Sean McGuire. And this is one of those books that I've been wondering if I should read ever since I first heard of it, and I figured I would just finally give it a go. It says that this is a story about amoral alchemy, shadowy organizations, and impossible cities. And I don't really know what that means, but it sounds interesting. I've seen several good reviews for this, and if I remember correctly, the story is about these twins, I think, who have been created somehow, and they have these abilities that someone wants to use for like world domination or something, and there's like an alchemist. I don't really know, but I just want to try it. I also really like this cover, by the way. Like, this cover is 10 out of 10, because the first time that I saw this, I was like, ooh, I need to know what that is. I also, by the way, thought that this book was a standalone, but then I looked it up on Goodreads and apparently there is a second book for this, but I'm hoping this will like read as a standalone because I just like those the best. Second to last, we have got a book that was very kindly sent to me by the publishers, and it is To the Lake by Jana, either Wagner or Wagner, I don't really know how to say it, but this book has been translated from Russian, which is really cool. And the story is about a flu epidemic which sweeps through Moscow, which feels very timely. I think this book came out like 10 years ago though, so I think it'll be interesting to read this and sort of read a fictionalized version of an epidemic and sort of compare notes, I guess. I wish we didn't have notes to compare, but I guess we kind of do now. I think the story focuses on a couple who decide to leave Moscow, and they go to this lake in the north of Russia, and I think the story is just about them trying to survive not only the epidemic, but also the Russian winter, which I imagine is quite challenging, for lack of a better word. Lastly, we have got a book in Norwegian that was recommended to me in a comment, and it sounds amazing. It is Den avstängte öja by Sigridur Hagalin Björnsdottir, and this has been translated from Icelandic, which is really cool, and it's set in Iceland, and it's this dystopian novel that sounds like very interesting but also horrifying, and I guess it starts off with Iceland waking up to a nightmare. They have been completely cut off from the world, like no planes are landing or taking off, and no boats are arriving, and the boats that leave never come back, which sounds very eerie. I'm assuming the whole place just descends into chaos and like the government loses control and there's a lack of resources and it's just a mess, but I'm sure it'll be a very fascinating mess to read about. So thank you very much to the person who recommended this to me. I'm really looking forward to it. Those are all the books that I got this month though, and I'm really excited about them. Like, I feel like I got a nice varied little stack, and as always, I would love to know if you've read any of these books and what you thought, or if you have picked up any exciting new books for yourself lately. As usual, links to my Patreon and other social media will be in the description if you're interested, and I will see you soon. Bye!